Hello and a warm welcome into this front core discussion. The topic for discussion for today will be around SEO with particular focus on why SEO is important for training providers. We're joined by a special guest, an industry expert for our discussion. Before we introduce our industry expert, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul. I work in international sales here at Frontcore. For those of you who are new to Frontcore, we're a Norwegian company and we provide training management systems and learning management systems. We've customers throughout Scandinavia and we've also got strong international growth. Frontcore wouldn't be Frontcore without this gentleman sitting beside me. So if it's okay, Doug, could you just introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Doug Luster. I'm the founder and CEO, and I'm really excited to be here with Paul and Andy. I'm really looking forward to learning more about this, actually.
Excellent. And we've saved the best for last. So Andy, would it be okay if we pass the mic isn't the right term, but if you wouldn't mind spending a few minutes introducing yourself and your company as well, please?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Andy Hawes. I run a company called Wiser IT, we specialize in SEO for businesses. We do some paid advertising tasks as well, but predominantly we focus on SEO. A little background about myself is that I'm from an IT and development background. So worked many years ago on mainframe computers and then moved into more client server and then into web technology. Always stayed with an IT edge to everything I've done. Moved into doing web design myself. I've also been the chief information officer for an international firm where I looked after all of the IT and digital marketing and really fell in love with the digital marketing side of things on how to use and manipulate the data to actually help websites to rank better on search engines. And then for the last several years, that's all I've been focusing on with my business is SEO for businesses and how that ties in with their websites, as I say, sometimes with their paid advertising as well, because I find they work hand in hand very well. And that's what I do now. And I love it.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for that introduction. So one of the things that I come across quite regularly in discussions with customers, and in particular with kind of new training providers, is the term SEO. Now, when new training providers find out about SEO, there's a lot more terms that come along with that, Andy, as you're well familiar.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, you're talking about SEO or tags. Could you just give us a quick run through of some of those phrases that may be new to, say, a new training providers when it comes to SEO? Please?
Yeah. I find with everything digital marketing, as with IT, there's a lot of acronyms which, yeah, a lot of people struggle with. SEO really stands for search engine optimization, and it's about how to improve your website rankings so that you show, hopefully, higher up on things like the Google search results page, Microsoft, Yahoo, etc. And there are several factors that play into that. Google, for example, which is the main player, really want to be able to read your website and understand exactly what you do in kind of plain English. But there are lots of things other than the actual content that's actually on your page. So you've got your website URL, for example, you've got headings, you've got your content, you've got the main things that users can see, and they need to be very obvious as to what the website is about, what the page is about, what the blog is about, or whichever element you're looking at. And they have to all interlink in such a way that you're building some sort of authority, that you look like an authority on a subject matter. But also behind the scenes, as you mentioned, Paul, there are lots of tags. So meta tags is a term that's thrown around a lot. And these are pieces of data behind the scenes that Google and the other search engines can read. So, for example, if you type something into Google, let's say first aid training, the piece that comes up there, you'll get your web address, but you also get the title, which is the SEO title, and the meta description, which often is a piece of text from the website itself or from the page itself, because Google will make that determination as to what to show. But you can influence that by adding those tags yourself behind the scenes. And similarly, even things like images, an image name might be just a random, jumble of letters and numbers, but you can add keywords and phrases into the image name. You can also use something called an image alt tag, which is an alternative tag, which sits behind the image, was originally developed actually for screen readers for the visually impaired, but it's a handy little tip that you can actually put keywords and phrases in there. So obviously with the alt tag, you give an alt tag that explains what the picture is, but if you happen to mention that it's to do with training, for example, that can also influence your Google rankings.
Good.
So does that help?
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. I actually learned something there as well, Andy. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
My first question, I kind of touched on kind of new training providers, but like SEO it's important for kind of new and established training providers. So a simple question, I suppose, but why should it be important for training providers?
Yeah. So what I've found over the years is a lot of people will have a website built and they just assume that customers will find them and that they will come, and that's rarely the case. So for training providers, you want to make sure that the website is optimized for your potential customers, for your existing and potentially new customers. So all of the SEO tags and all the work that we do around keywords and phrases and questions and answers are playing into that. So if you know who your customers are, where they are, what they're looking for, you can really create the website content and meta tags, as well as external factors, which we'll hopefully come on to later, to really play into those customers so that you're showing the right data to the right customers at the right time and in the right place.
So is it ultimately kind of like that you want to be found first?
Yeah. So around 90+% of all the clicks on Google go to the top 3 positions on page 1. So ideally you want to be in those positions. Obviously, further down page 1, you get some clicks. On page 2, you get less. So the more that you can do to play into your customers with the content on your site and the tags and the whole SEO work, the more likely you are to appear in those positions. Obviously, it's not always that easy. It depends who your competitors are, how big their marketing departments are, and how much work they've done on it. So that's another key factor, is to know who your competitors are as well.
So with the thought of kind of being found first, I suppose a question then would be, would you, for example, be able to give us 4 tips?
Yeah, I can try and put it into 4. There's a lot of things to do, but the very first thing I would look at is the website itself. So you've had a nice website built. It looks great. It needs to be fast. It needs to be mobile friendly, because Google in particular look at mobile first in terms of all of their scoring for speed and SEO. So it needs to be mobile friendly. And you need to make the website really obvious in terms of what you do. A good way to do that is actually just get customer feedback. If you've created a new website, call some customers, speak to them. If you've got a good relationship with them, they're the best source of information that you'll ever have. So knowing your customers and speaking to them. So that would be the first tip. I know there's a lot in there. Second tip I would say is, if you provide specific services or products or product categories, make sure that you create a really good page for each of those. So if you've got a service providing first aid training, for example, make sure you've got a page all about first aid training, and that it's the most authoritative page on the web about that subject. You're showing your expertise, and it's a trust factor both to Google but also to your potential customers, that you know what you're talking about, basically. So with that page, I always try and get a page of between 1,500 and 2,000 words, because the pages that rank highest on Google around the world tend to have around 1,500 to 2,000 words. So, it just makes sense to be within that arena. You want to make sure that you include keywords and phrases in every element of that page. So the website URL, the web address, the title, the headings, the text, the meta tags, the image names, the alt tags, literally everywhere. So without flooding it so that it just looks like, it's a string of keywords, which is what used to happen many years ago. You just put thousands of occurrences of the same keyword on a page and you'd rank number one. It doesn't work like that anymore. You've got to be sensible about it. It's got to be readable. It's got to be good human written content, basically. So that's number two. Number three, I always try and create multiple blogs that relate to that key service or product category page. And the goal for the way that I do it is to try and create a silo of knowledge. So you've got your key pillar page about your key product or service, and then 4 or 5 blogs that link to each other with more information about that subject matter that all link to that key pillar page. That creates a really strong authority about the subject. And again, it makes you more of the authority on that subject as far as Google is concerned. Number 4 would be to be as active on as many social channels as you possibly can be. I see a lot of companies that if they're B2C, they tend to use Facebook. If they're B2B, they might use Twitter, X, or LinkedIn. I would just want them to be everywhere. Get on X, LinkedIn, Facebook. Google Business is a great one because it's a Google-owned piece of the Google platform. And you can post on there just like it's a social media platform. Even things like Threads, which is not that popular, but you never know where your customer's going to be. And you can use third-party tools like Buffer, for example, where you can post to multiple channels at once. So it's not even that hard to do, to post to 6, 7, 8 channels at once, rather than just the 1 or 2 that you might be using. So that would be my top 4. But it's never quite as easy as that. So my number 5, if I may, would be to get what we call backlinks, or links from other websites into yours. It's a really strong indicator to Google and the other search engines that your website is an authority on the subject. It helps to raise your what we call domain authority. So getting links from, you can get links from, business pages, business directories, quite, non-meaning websites, but also if you get really authoritative links from other websites in your industry, or from national press, or from websites that are already regarded as authoritative, then they're really powerful. And the more quality links that you get, the more likely your website is to rank. I've done lots of testing around this, where I've created a website all about a given subject, created lots of content, made sure that the website's fast and, everything is perfect, and it doesn't rank anywhere. As soon as you build some backlinks, it starts to rank. Now, the backlinks on their own won't work without having done all the SEO and the keyword and the speed and all the other work. You've got to do it all for it to work really well. And one final one, if I might.
Yes, please, Andy.
So you've got your great website. It's functioning really well. It's really SEO friendly. You've got backlinks from all over the place into it. What you can do to really boost things quickly, because SEO takes time. For a brand new website, it can take up to a year for it to rank anywhere. If you happen to run Google ads and paid social ads, it can really boost your SEO a lot quicker. So you're getting your ads which run immediately. So you're getting an instant hit to your website, which can bring you customers, of course. But I always find that if you're running ads in line with your SEO seems to perform better more quickly. So doing both hand in hand works great. And where you've got good SEO, things like your Google scores for your ads and your keywords will generally be better because your SEO on page is better as well. So I couldn't keep it to 4.
But it sounds like Google is pretty smart. They want you to spend some money also alongside the organic work you do.
Absolutely. Google have got better and better at giving customers what they feel they want to see. So it's all, in the customer's interest. But Google are making some money along the way, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think I read 75% of their revenues are ad revenues. So
yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Now I have a question because we have customers and all different sizes. From the very small ones to the big ones with a lot of training revenues. And I think this battle for attention is sometimes really overwhelming. And all the things that you describe here it's also a competitive game because this is not static. It changes. You do some changes, and then you achieve a ranking in the search results, and then next week you see, oh, something happened. I dropped to the 5th place. I used to be number 2nd. So this game of doing fine tuning and also looking at this as a dynamic game is really important. And I wanted to hear your perspective on how do you measure that you're actually doing the right things? How do you really keep track of your results and making sure you have the tools to also fine tune, push the right buttons to make sure you maybe get back the first, spot in the search results.
Yeah. It is a bit of a game, and you do have to keep constantly creating new content, fresh content, because that's what Google wants. But you're right. You've got competition, and if other people are in the same market competing for the same keywords, phrases, questions, answers, for the same spots on Google, then you have to fight quite hard sometimes. I use the Google's own free tools to do a lot of analysis. So things like Google Search Console. Google Ads has a lot of tools in there for things like keyword analysis. But then other third-party tools for actually tracking your progress, as well as Google Search Console, because you can see where you're showing up on the search results page directly through that. But things like SEMrush, SE Ranking, Ubersuggest, Ahrefs, all these third-party tools that tap into the Google tools themselves, but also have a lot of their own data. So you can track your performance for your keywords and phrases, but you can also do a lot of analysis within there to see where your position is, how many hits you're getting, etc. And you can also do competitive analysis. So if somebody is beating you to number 1, you can work out why and how they're doing it, so that you can fight that. But as I say, if you're competing against large players, if you're a brand new sneaker company and you expect to beat Nike, well, forget it. They've got very deep pockets.
I was actually thinking about that question because it's also about what sort of niche you're in, how competitive the segment or industry you're in is, and training. Do you is that a competitive segment? Are you working with a lot of different sectors, and is training considered a competitive segment or less competitive, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's as you say, there's so many different niches. So I do work with a first aid training company, and it's relatively competitive, not as competitive as some of the others that I deal with. But you really have to look at each one in their own right. Sometimes there are niches within the niches that you can play into. There are keywords or phrases or questions that customers are asking that nobody else is answering. And also looking at the whole funnel of your customer. There might be somebody who's about to set up a training company or a first aid company, let's say, and they're very early in their journey. So they will be asking completely different questions or looking for completely different things within the search versus somebody who's right at the point of purchase. So depending on what your competitors are doing, if they're trying to target people just before they make the purchase, sometimes you can play into the people that are really early on in their journey, get into the back of their brain already. So when they are ready to purchase, you're already front of mind.
It's interesting stuff. It's, like you say, dynamic. It is really, really interesting stuff. So Andy, like when you're speaking there, you remind me. So Andy's familiar with Frontcore because of a customer that Andy works with. And even throughout that process, he's like he is today, he was hugely impressive, I have to say. So, but Andy, could you just talk a little bit about kind of how Frontcore helped your customer and also kind of helped you in your role, please?
Yeah, so the particular customer that I'm dealing with use Frontcore for their booking forms on their website. So I'm actually running some Google ads for them. And the part that I really wanted to do for them is to help track conversions. So for them, a conversion, and every business is different. For some, it's an e-commerce online sale. For this particular customer, their conversions are either a phone call or they're maybe a contact form, that's kind of a micro conversion, or it's a booking through the Frontcore forms. So we worked with Frontcore and with the customers to actually be able to track both the phone call clicks on their website, but also the conversions through their Frontcore forms. So we have our Google Tag Manager tags within the Frontcore forms. We can track those. We feed them through Google Analytics and back into the Google Ads to basically say to Google, this is what a conversion looks like. We want to get more of these bookings. So go and find potential customers that will want to do the same. So it's a great piece of data that we feed back in, and that particular customer gets hundreds of bookings, which we feed into Google. It's all anonymized data, so there's no privacy issues, but we're just saying to Google, these are the kind of customers that we want. We want to get more of these bookings. So feeding the data back through, it just creates a feedback loop where we can generate more of the same. So yeah, Frontcore were really helpful, and yeah, it's been a very good, successful story for us.
I was. My next question was going to be, why is tracking these conversions important? But I think Andy's kind of answered that one there. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, as I say, conversions for every customer, for every website can be different. Often things like phone call clicks can be the conversion factor. Sometimes they are as simple as a contact us form. Yeah, for this particular customer, having the booking form was a really powerful thing to feed in, both from a data perspective to know how things are going, because we can track those, but also to make the Google Ads work better for us.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, I've been working with this for a little while myself, and one of the things that is really, really important now, compared to the paper media, where you spend, a chunk of money and you really don't know who is converting into business, and this is what we really want with SEO and paid ads. And so Absolutely. I think what's really powerful with the work you do and working with SEO and also paid ads is you can really also pinpoint if you're getting the relevant traffic into your website, because it's not only about getting traffic as much as possible. It's also to get the relevant traffic in that actually converts to business. So you're spending your money wisely. And I think that's a very important part about tracking also, not only the conversions, but also where the traffic comes from, and if it actually ends up in your, the bottom of your funnel into a booking form.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because historically, when conversions weren't a thing, we used to just look at clicks, or impressions, which is how many times the advert might show, and clicks, and we would have a click-through rate, and you'd start at maybe 1%, and you try and push it up to 5-10%, but it was a very loose measure, really, because just because you're getting a click to your website, you don't know how many of those websites might actually convert to be a customer. And normally the percentages are fairly small. So you might only have, from all of your impressions of your ad, you might only have, between 1% and 5% say click to your website. But of those clicks, maybe only 1% of those convert into a customer. And I think this is often what people don't realize, is they think if their website's getting seen, well, that's always going to lead to sales, but it doesn't always. And if the landing experience for the customer isn't good, or isn't clear what you do, or you're not offering the thing that they really want, then they'll disappear very quickly to your competitor. So again, it comes back to having a good website, very obvious about what you do, really good, clear calls to action to make sure that when the customer comes, ideally you want them to come to one page of your site to say, yep, that's exactly what I want. Click the button, book through front core, click the phone number, whatever your conversion factor is, to make that sale, because that's what everybody wants. Ultimately, all of this is about your return on investment for your ads, or for the work that goes into SEO to convert into sales. And if it doesn't work, then, well, I'm out of a job. So it has to work.
Yeah,
exactly.
Can you say just a little, because what I'm hearing is, on the one hand, it's really important to do good work with SEO and paid ads to get the good traffic, but it's also good to have a website that guides the customer in the customer journey well into what the website is supposed to do, and that could be different goals for different customers. But the book you mentioned, the booking form. What are a couple of few good pieces of advice to customers working on optimizing this funnel from traffic to website to conversion?
So ideally, you want to get the customer to the page that is the converting page. So if, let's say, the page is the one with the booking form on, and it's about, I don't know, let's say dog first aid training, as an example. So whether it's through your ad or through your SEO, ideally you want that page to show up and be clicked to immediately. The page to be well optimized, mobile friendly, so that no matter what platform they're on, it just works seamlessly. It's obvious that that page is what that person's looking for. So the content, the images, or whatever else is on the page needs to be really obvious. And then you've got clear calls to action. So if it was a phone number click, you have your phone number at the top. If it's a booking form, we'll make that so that it's clearly visible. Ideally, I want as much as possible to be above the fold, which is the piece that you see when you first open a website without scrolling. I find that about 75% of people never scroll down a web page, and I run various tools like Hotjar and Microsoft Clarity to analyze things like this. So if you've got a website, for example, with a huge image banner or a video and no call to action, nothing clickable, nothing to do, you'll probably lose a lot of your customers, and your website will be really slow as a result. Whereas if you're selling, I don't know, plant pots, well, as soon as somebody opens that page, show them a plant pot for sale. Yeah, it's as simple as that. And if it's a booking form, I would have that maybe not dominating the above the fold area, but maybe on the right hand side, or at least a part of the start of the booking form visible, just so that it's really obvious that the page is what you're looking for, and this is your call to action is to click the booking form and get booked in. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
it sounds to me that also credibility. You mentioned authority, which is a key sort of term here in this game, and creating quick credibility when they land on your page that they actually arrived to the correct place. They got what I need. And so that's really key also to
exactly. And that's easier to do through things like Google Ads or social media, where you link directly to that page. Of course, it has to match your keywords and your ads very closely for the ads to work well. But for SEO, that's where we put a lot of work in to make sure that that authoritative pillar page is really the key page. And all of the rest of the work that we do, building blogs and building backlinks, is really to feed the authority into that page. You almost end up with a tree structure of outside backlinks, internal links from blogs and from other pages into that, so that you're saying that is the key page about that subject, and that's the one we want people to go to.
Yeah. It's very interesting, very interesting. Even for me, from my perspective, when I go onto a web page as well, what I'm describing makes complete sense for me. Yeah. So, Andy, a term we hear on a daily basis now is AI.
Yeah.
So, a question. My last question will be: how is it, or how is that changing SEO?
Yeah, so it is changing pretty rapidly as well. This year it's come on leaps and bounds. There's a lot more AI models. Search is dominated by AI, and what Google and the other search engines are trying to do, Microsoft, etc., are use their AI models to answer your questions. Because ultimately, if you have a question, they want to answer it. They don't really want you to leave Google. They don't really want you to click to a website now. They want to give you the answer, which is ultimately the best user experience. If I've got a question about, how to charge my phone, and I type it into Google and it comes up with the answer, I don't need to go any further. That's, for me as a user, that's fantastic. In terms of SEO, it does present us some unique challenges, because whereas SEO used to be all about optimizing for keywords and phrases, now it's more about conversations and questions and answers. So where users going into Google or into ChatGPT or whichever AI you use, it's becoming more question and answer. It's becoming more conversational. So they might ask the search or the AI model a question, which it will then combine data from lots of different websites to try and answer the question. And then there might be a subsequent question that follows that. So what we do as part of our SEO work is to try and get those questions and answers on the website. So if we've got a pillar page about a particular subject, we'll have questions and answers, the top questions and answers that people tend to ask on that page in short form. And we use something called schema, which is something that tells Google this is a question and this is an answer. So we've got a very quick questions and answer piece. And Google likes those chunked pieces of information to combine with other websites to give its full authoritative answer. But then we tend to, for the key questions, we'll then write a long form blog about that, so that we've got the 1,500, 2,000 words in longer form, so that we then can form more of those answers that Google gives. And also, if you look further down the Google results page, you'll also get things like people also ask. And a lot of our questions and answers tend to appear in there as the full answer. So we're just trying to dominate page one of Google, basically. So as to whether that's the AI overview, whether it's the top few positions for individual keywords, whether it's the Google business on the right-hand side, whether it's a YouTube video, a Facebook post, the people also asked, or ads. If you're hitting all of those, then you can start to dominate page one, as long as the competition allows.
What do you think? I mean, I think this is really interesting, what's happening. And I've done some readings on this, and while the estimate varies, you read news stories that sort of claim that now the LLMs, the large language models, will capture 25% of the traditional search engine traffic. And also interesting what you said, the conversational mode has some implications also, because you see, a lot more words being used in the searches. You see longer sessions, and this feeling of not just searching and getting an answer, but you converse. You create sort of a human-like conversation. So you have actually higher conversion. I read a study in Forbes was released, and they had 9 times higher conversion from the LLMs than in Google. So what's your take on this? Where do you see this going, and how can we advise our customers to get up, higher into these AI overviews and get citations?
LLMs are changing. All of the search is changing. Even in the last few weeks and months, it's changed enormously. As I mentioned, it's not just about keywords anymore. Your questions, your answers, your conversational content on your website, also off your website as well, is so much more critical than it used to be. So don't just optimize for keywords, optimize for AI overviews, for questions, for answers, for conversational tone. I'm personally not seeing a lot of conversions from the AI search or from LLMs. I'm not seeing a massive amount actually landing on sites, but equally that is exactly what the search providers want. They don't necessarily want you to click away from them. They want to answer your question or click on an ad, ideally. So I'm not seeing a huge amount of traffic from the websites, but that's not to say that our content isn't showing. So even if our content is showing as part of the AI overviews and the branding is showing and there are potential clicks, then that's a win. The other thing is that the AI overviews are being experimented with at different positions within the search. So whereas at first they were just at the top, Google in particular have been experimenting with different positions to see what works best and gives them the best results. So it's really one to watch. We've just got to keep an eye on everything that Google are doing and the other major players, Microsoft, Perplexity, everybody. They're all fighting for the same game, fighting for the same traffic effectively. So I often find what one does, the other one quickly catches up with. So yeah, it is a challenge, but for me at the moment, having the pillar pages with the questions and answers, make sure your schema is right and make sure that your blog content is good, it's fresh and it's constantly kept up to date, and that the internal links and the questions and answers are being answered very thoroughly. If you look at 3 of your competitors and see, if they're ranking above you, see what they've got on their website. Often you can determine why one is placed above another or is placed above you, and just try and be better.
Yeah. What do you think is are the most important criteria to actually be mentioned in the AI overviews and get a citation in the LLMs? How much of a role does the content production play in this game?
Well, the content is everything, ultimately. Yeah. If you look at an AI overview, it's snippets of information from various different websites that it's piecing together to try and answer your question as concisely and thoroughly as possible. Yeah. So your questions need to answer, or you need to answer those questions very thoroughly as the authority in that field. So if you specialize in gardening, you need to come across as the authority in gardening and look at the questions that people are asking, look at the conversations that they're having, and answer those as thoroughly as possible. If you've got 3 competitors who are answering questions in a couple of paragraphs, well, answer them in a 2,000-word blog. And as long as the content is good, it's human written, don't go for purely AI written content. I have experimented with that as well. You can get purely AI content to rank, but it tends to be not that great. If humans read it, often you can tell it's AI. You get a lot of repetition. So if you create 2 blogs about the same subject, both written by AI, there'll be a lot of repetition. There'll be a lot of duplication of information. So I'm not saying don't use AI to help you write content or to give you some themes or some structure, but I would always 80% of my content that I write is human written, basically.
I think that's a really important piece of information, because I think it's so tempting today to go in and just crank out pages and pages with seemingly good content, but if it doesn't rank.
Well, because you've got to think about how AI works. So AI reads all of the content that already exists and rewrites it and puts it together and gives you a blog or a page. So it's nothing new. Whereas you might know something about your industry or about booking forms, for example, that nobody else knows. So you're the only one who can write that, and you can write it better and more authoritatively than anybody else on the planet. So, show Google and show your customers your worth in that way. Don't just rewrite other people's content, actually write something fresh and new, because from a user perspective, they've probably read it or seen it, or they can get it in the AI overviews. If you're writing something new that they've never seen before, then that's great. That's great for everybody.
I think it's important to sort of make the statement that human creativity is actually worth something even in the AI age.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see it going away anytime soon. Don't get me wrong, AI is getting better. The content that they create, and I use AI for some coding. I write some SEO tools that help me do my job more quickly, and on that side of it, AI is getting better all the time. And maybe in the future there'll be more jobs in being an AI prompter to make sure that the output from AI is better, because it all comes down to how well you prompt it. But the AI isn't going to create fresh content because it just doesn't necessarily know that.
Super interesting stuff. Super interesting stuff. And with that, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Andy, I could do another 20 minutes to an hour listening to this. It's been
I could
fantastic.
talk about it all day.
But you love your job. And then it comes across in the way you're speaking about it. So I suppose all that's left is to say, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today.
That's right.
Thanks a million, Andy.
Yeah.
Great to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you as well for joining. Elena, as always, just off camera there. Thank you so much for joining us as well and helping out with today. And for you, the viewers, I hope you found this as informative as I am. And we'll see you in the next one. Many thanks.